I like to use an iceberg analogy, right? So what you see, 25% is above water. That's what the customer sees. That's when they see recommended for you, right?
Yeah.
The 75% is what they don't see. So that's the data, the segmentation logic, the triggers. AI isn't a person.
Yeah.
It doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have senses. It
Yeah.
can't feel your brand story. It
Yeah.
uses data to solve an equation. We learned through feedback that it wasn't actually barrier to purchase. Customers would buy, but then they wouldn't actually use the product. It sat on the shelf. And the reason was that they didn't know how to use it properly. Every single recommendation was another TV console. So I'm living in New York City, and I don't know how many family rooms or TVs they thought I had, but it was the most ineffective type of personalization you could have ever seen.
This is the Digital Shelf Insider podcast of Metrics Cart. We've officially hit a tipping point where personalization isn't just a marketing tactic. In fact, it's the primary driver of the P&L. Recent data shows that CPG brands excelling at personalization are now generating 40% more revenue from those activities than their slower growing competitors. But there's a disconnect. While most brand teams think they're being personal, they're usually just being noisy. Today, we are talking about customer signals as a growth lever. How do you move past one-size-fits-all model to drive actual volume? What are the underused cues from search behavior to churn triggers that you already have, but you're not actually taking a look at it? Returning to the show for a second time is Jennifer Alexander. Jennifer is an independent e-commerce consultant who doesn't just look at dashboards, she looks at the human behavior driving the metrics. She specializes in helping brands of all sizes bridge that gap between consumer insights and revenue management. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'm joined by Jenny for the second time, and I'm so excited to have you here, Jenny.
Thank you so much, Shrestha. It is a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me back on the podcast.
Right. And we are going to get super chatty about personalization for the second time. Last time, it was a very short, quick episode. We were giving a overall perspective of how it is for brands. But this time, we're going to dig deep into how personalization can be a conversion lever and so many exciting parts of it. I'm curious, I'm excited, and I'm sure this is going to be a very valuable episode for our audience. So let's get started.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So many conversations stop at what personalization is, and from your work with legacy as well as D2C brands, what is your perspective? Like, why does personalization actually work, and how does it show up in the buying behavior? I mean, this is like a very broad question. We'll get into details bit by bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think let's start just by defining personalization. And I like to do that by showcasing personalization versus customization. So at least for this episode, you and I and everyone listening has just a clear picture going forward. So let's start with customization. That's where the customer does the work, right? They're setting subscription preferences, they're building their bundles, right? What might you want to choose to go with something else, picking your color, etc. Personalization is really where the brand does the work based on what they know about the customer. What products are they showing you? In what size? What are they recommending? What's the brand recommending based on past purchases? Sort of the simplest way to think about it.
Yeah.
And when we think about that from a personalization perspective, why does it work? Right. So there's a couple things. One, it reduces what I call like the cognitive load for a consumer, right? There's so much choice. And I know, I certainly talked about that. You've talked about that before. There's so much choice today for a consumer. So how do you make it so that there's fewer irrelevant choices for a consumer? If I never buy baby clothing.
Yeah.
Don't show me baby clothing, right? Unless you get data that suggests otherwise. And there's plenty of that data available, but don't show me that, right? I think that's just a really simple way of saying, don't make me choose from something that just isn't relevant.
Yeah.
And the second one is around understanding the context of what the customer is thinking, saying, feeling, and doing. So you're not just selling to a consumer, but you're solving for them, right? I think that's another reason why it works really well. And then, what's obvious, sort of third that comes out of that for me is making that next action just obvious, right? So less friction, fewer relevant choices, something that understands my context, that drives higher conversion. And so if you think about doing this, at a small scale, that's just a personalized, thoughtful note to a recent customer or a reminder to reorder. But from a larger brand perspective, right, that might mean you have to automate and do advanced segmentation and base it on rules. And let's get into all of that because I'm excited definitely excited to dive in and sort of just talk a little bit about it more.
Right. So in a nutshell, we can probably say that it's sort of the brand's way of giving a sense of agency to the customer to see what they should see is what personalization is.
I love that, right? Yeah, agency to the customer. It helps put them in control, but in a sense that you're giving them that most relevant information. So I love the way that you frame that.
Right. What's the under the hood side of personalization that, most brands sort of underestimate or never see?
Yeah. I have a really funny story that I want to share on this one. It's a personal story. So years ago, I bought a TV console from a major retailer online.
Yeah.
And for the months following, the personalized emails that I got, you might also like,
Yeah. Yeah.
every single recommendation was another TV console.
No way.
So I'm living in New York City, and I don't know how many family rooms or TVs they thought I had, but it was the most ineffective type of personalization you could have
Yeah.
ever seen, right? I mean, recommend a TV, recommend a sound bar, maybe recommend a plant that can go on top
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
console next to the TV. But that what's under the hood is the data that fixes that, right? So getting
Yeah.
getting serious again. It's a funny story, and I think we've all probably seen something like that or experienced that, right? You've
Yeah.
received that email or that you've gone to a site and just been like, this is not at all what I expected.
Yeah.
But the right data, that's what fixes it. That's what's under the hood. And for me, under the hood, I like to use an iceberg analogy, right? So what
Yeah.
you see, 25% is above water. That's what the customer sees. That's when they
Right.
see recommended for you, right?
Yeah.
The 75% is what they don't see. So that's the data, the segmentation logic, the triggers, right? When do you send that recommended for you email, the creative production, right? All the work that goes around it to give you the shell of what it is that you're putting personalization inside. And then hopefully, a lot of QA, right? Not just is it functional and does it work, but is it useful to the consumer? And so I think brands, they focus on that top of the iceberg, right? Let's personalize emails. But
Yes.
they forget to build what's underneath, and that's where it breaks. And that's where, a consumer like me gets a ridiculous email about more TV consoles.
Yes. This is surely very hilarious. Like, I mean, this happens a lot to me on Instagram, I guess, because, but then that's a very different scenario where, you know, I might be looking for a pair of red shoes and then I've already made the purchase from a particular brand. But then there are the other set of brands who are just pushing those ads on me, like, okay, we do have
Yeah.
something different, something interesting. Why don't you just, check it out? But I already have
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. My favorite example of that is on YouTube TV.
Yeah.
I get ads. So my husband and I were watching TV and we get ads for e-commerce optimization. right? Here's an agency that, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, my husband just looked at me and said, I mean, he's like, was that you? Like, what are you doing offline? What are you doing in YouTube ads? This is they're offering exactly what you do.
Yeah.
No, I get more of that than I care to admit. It's quite interesting.
All right, before we get back into the conversation, I just want to take a moment to talk about something that can really elevate the way you manage your e commerce channels. If you're in the consumer goods or durable space, listen up. You already know that staying ahead in the digital marketplace is crucial, whether you're a retailer, brand, or agency. But how do you get the most accurate insights in real time? How do you keep track of competitor price activity, consumer trends, and constant changes in product visibility? That's where MetricScart comes in. MetricScart is a marketplace intelligence platform designed specifically for e-commerce teams like yours. It gives you a holistic, data-driven view of your performance across all digital shelves. Whether it's price monitoring, competitive analysis, or understanding trends before they become a wave, MetricScart has you covered. I've seen firsthand how this kind of intelligence takes brands from just surviving to thriving. If you're managing products in the consumer goods or durable space, it's a game changer. Check them out, and I promise you, your e commerce game won't be the same. Now, let's get back to the show. Right. Uh, so when we see personalization work, what are the business metrics kind of associated with it? Is it the conversion rate, repeat purchases, of course, AOV? I think you would have a perspective on this.
Yeah, I think so. It depends on where you put the personalization message.
Yeah.
Right. And I've been talking a little bit about email. So let's use email as just an SMS as a marketing example, right?
Yeah.
The first piece and what you'll see first from a metrics perspective are those input metrics that are gonna move first, right? Those are your
Yeah.
open rates, your click-through rate, maybe even revenue per subscriber.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, what's gonna follow is your AOV, your attention rate, your lifetime value. They're you know, AOV might show up a little bit sooner, but your retention rate and lifetime value, or those are lagging, right? Those will show up later once you've really been driving that personalization engine, if you will. But I think what's important is not confusing engagement with revenue, right? They're connected, but they're not at all the same. So, a personalized subject line in your email, it'll get you a higher open rate.
Yes.
Interesting. But a personalized product recommendation inside, hopefully that's driving a higher AOV and a higher conversion rate and maybe even a higher lifetime value, right? Because the consumer is saying, okay, they know me, they know what I might be interested in.
Makes sense. Uh, and you often talk about customer signals as a growth tactic. So, which signals matter most at early stage as well as, the brand is scaling?
Yeah, I think early on. So when we talk about early stage, the the metrics that matter and the signals that matter just are the simplest ones. So
Yeah.
your traffic, your conversion rate, cart abandonment, and maybe customer acquisition cost. I think it depends on your goals, but just don't complicate it. Keep it really simple. If you're not looking at a lot of data right now, don't start looking at thousands of rows of metrics, right? You won't know where to look, right? Just keep it simple. You will have to expand, right? As the brand, if you're thinking about early stage versus an established brand, right? You will start to like expand that view and think about, whether it's new, retained, or whatever it might be. There's the simple answer is there's a lot of data to look at. And if you're just starting out, start simple, right?
Yeah.
Look at orders, conversion, traffic, AOV,
Yeah.
bounce rate, right? Like the simplest ones, figure out what's not working, and see how personalization might be able to help solve the the business problem that you have.
Yeah. And I think even the team structures would be so lean that, they couldn't accommodate to look at many metrics at a time, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, a lot of some teams will have, an analytics lead who is looking at metrics, right? And that's their role. But surface the ones that are the most important to drive your business goals, right? Those are the ones that you want to be looking at. And once you've mastered that, then you move on and you dig deeper and you find other ways to drive that growth.
Right. Are there any kind of underused personalization cues which, brands already have access to, but they don't act upon? Like kind of the case scenarios you probably have noticed with brands you work with.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously some really obvious ones, I would think, like what people are searching for, questions that they're asking. But one that's super underutilized is returns and exchanges. So here you literally have a customer saying, I didn't like this product, right? What
Yeah.
didn't work about it? And you can find so much information there, right? Was it fit? Was it size? Was it expectation versus reality? And if you're thinking about returns, a lot of brands are like, okay, this is a logistics problem, but it's actually like a personalization gold mine, right? If someone buys a size medium and large
Yeah.
and they keep the large and return the medium, well, don't keep showing them mediums, right? I mean, really, really simple, right? And I think you'll have to extract that, from a brand perspective into what does that mean for my brand specifically, right? That's a really simple example, but it is really true that there's a lot of detail from a customer perspective that you can get around what it is that they're looking for, and then take the friction out of it, personalize it so that that friction and those choices are easier for a customer, for a consumer to make.
Absolutely. And how do strong D2C brands decide, which signals are sort of directional noise and versus the signals that's worth operationalizing on?
Yeah. So I mentioned this a little bit before, but it's all about focus and a clear North Star, aligned objectives, whatever that might be. But it's your business goals. And those, right, are gonna vary by brand, by company, and whatnot. So if you're thinking about, you're a brand and you want to gain market share, right? As an example, well, then some of the metrics that you want to look at that are more signals and worth operationalizing might be new customer acquisition, right? But a brand that's maybe already number one in the category, well, they're going to want to look at retention and churn, right? To keep
Yeah.
that number one spot. And so I think the question to ask is the signal telling you something as a brand that you can act on to achieve your goal? Or is it just interesting? The data is very interesting. I look at it all the time. You can get absolutely bogged down in it.
Yeah.
But if it's not actionable, then
It's questionable.
maybe yeah, exactly. It's not actionable, it's questionable. Exactly. So I think, right, I mean, the example that I gave around market share, it's not saying that only one of those, acquisition or retention, matter, but if you don't have a clear business goal, then they're both questionable, right? They either
Yeah.
both matter, neither of them do. So I think the focus is really what's important. Tie it back to your goal, then look for the signals that can help you take action on that goal.
Right. Um, this is something I mean you and I have discussed even before our conversation. It's about how Metriscard has this review analysis feature. It's pretty cool to dig into consumer insights, not just from the product attribute perspective, but also from the emotions associated with it. Like, are they feeling happy using it, or are they feeling sad? Are they anxious? Are they anticipating sort of a price rise, or are they upset with the packaging? They're like different ways of looking at things for different category of brands. So my question is, are reviews tied to personalization in some way, or what can brands really pick from those insights?
Yeah, I think it's great, right? And I know you and I have talked about this before a little bit, and there isn't really a one size fits all answer. It does go back to the brand and their goals. And so I have an example of one where I got it absolutely wrong in the beginning that I'll share with you. So I'm working with this skincare brand. They're really small. They have a very bespoke approach to how they create skincare, very handmade. They use regenerative farming, harvesting the ingredients. It's a really beautiful brand story. And the goal was, grow the brand from here to there, right? So grow the brand. And so it's skincare, and I have a lot of experience in skincare. And so I made an assumption. I assumed that based on everything that I know, that the benefit claim has to matter to consumers. Right? Everything that I've known about skincare tells me that the benefit claim has to matter. Well, when we talk to these customers, and the customers that make up the base of this brand to grow, yeah, it's important, but not so much as that story behind the brand, the sourcing, the ingredients, how the products were made. It was really unique to this brand, and thinking about how you use that to attract new consumers was what, ultimately helped us grow. So we didn't do the thing that either both that I thought was going to be the key to growth, as well as what a lot of other skincare brands do, because it is important to some group of consumers, right? But I think the lesson that I learned when I think about how, we're looking at things, we're looking at those signals, what matters, right? When you personalize or even just create the right brand story for a brand is I was looking at what I was expecting to find, right? I was looking for something to validate what I thought was already true, but when we talked to the consumer, they told us something not completely different, but they definitely it was in a different direction, right? And so I think that's really where you want to look at the data, you want to look at the reviews, you want to look at what your consumers are telling you. And, for this brand, it was to grow, to drive acquisition. And so we needed to find other customers that felt the same way about that skincare. And it's not about confirming what I already thought to be or what I thought to be true, but finding out what it's truly unique from a brand perspective and just going from there.
Wow. Like I do have a very similar story to share of a brand from India. It's called Indie Wild. It's a skincare brand again. And so I heard the founder speak on another podcast, and she shared that she spoke to at least 60 customers before she launched the product, and she learned the same thing. The whole point was the story or the narrative of the brand was more important than the actual, the ingredient list, how it was made. All of that was a secondary thing for the customer. So this is very interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting hook from a skincare perspective. We could talk about this for hours, but it's also I think the lens to put on it, what I heard you say is it's really good for acquisition, right? Does it mean it's going to necessarily retain a customer? So I think there is another side to that, to think about, but at least from an acquisition perspective, yeah, absolutely. Following the brand in both of those cases clearly was what's going to work.
Yeah. Um, have you kind of seen, where a customer feedback has directly changed the product positioning, the claims, or even the pack architecture? Like, what could have triggered those decisions? I think it goes back to the example that we just spoke about, but how would it like play out in other categories? I'm wondering.
Yeah, so I have another really interesting example here, and I mean the fact of the matter is, it does happen. It's not as often as I think some people would like to see it, or certainly I would like to see it. But I have a different example from a very large brand in the healthcare medical space, and this was this was consequential as well, but in a completely different way. So when we were working through from a brand perspective and thinking about, driving an acquisition strategy, an awareness and an acquisition strategy, we sort of assumed that there was like a barrier. There was a barrier to purchase, right? For this particular brand, for this healthcare product. But we learned through feedback that it wasn't actually a barrier to purchase. Customers would buy, but then they wouldn't actually use the product. It sat on the shelf. And the reason was that they didn't know how to use it properly. And so if a customer used the product, what we learned is if they stuck with it for 90 days, they essentially became a lifetime customer. But if they bought it and then never used it, they never came back to make another purchase. And so it's a fundamentally different problem to solve. And everything just shifted in that moment. The position became less about buying and so much more about proper usage. So that was onboarding, it was training, it was peer and expert advice, FAQs, a retention strategy, right? An acquisition to retention strategy. And I mean, the feedback that we saw was we were actually solving the wrong problem. We weren't solving a problem that the customer actually had. And so once we stopped that, optimizing right the top of the funnel in our awareness and focused on getting people, our customers, through the first 90 days, everything changed from there, right? So messaging, positioning, everything that I said before, really just completely pivoted. So bigger brand, much bigger brand. Similar type of story, but I think fundamentally just a little bit different in terms of sort of how we acted on it and what we did.
Right. And sometimes I guess awareness is overlooked at some cases, like brands think that they already know how to use it or it's quite simple. There's no need of trying different types of awareness, like not just on social media, but in physical stores or like marketplaces. There's different modes that exist for awareness. So I think somewhere it is overlooked too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's each of those places has a different maybe customer goal even, right? Like a marketplace might be get in, get out, just get your list of stuff. Maybe you're searching for something, maybe you have something in mind already, right? Whereas some of those other places, there's more search and discovery, right? That's going on. I mean, you can see that in social media being search and discovery, your marketplace being where you land the sale, for example. So there's definitely differences, and I think the customer probably a lot of times comes in with a different mindset, even if they don't know that they have a different mindset, right? But it's just automatic, right? You go to here, Amazon, to buy the things that you're always buying on your list, right? Versus you finding maybe an extra pair of red shoes when you're scrolling through your Instagram feed.
Yes. Another thing we also notice is like the behavior of the customers for the brands that exist in YouTube, Reddit, TikTok. It's very, very different. And you and I have discussed this previously also. How does personalization play out in these platforms, from the brand side?
Yeah, I think distinguishing them and what you hear back in and what you do in each of those different platforms is definitely different. So we just talked a little bit about like what the customer expectation is, and then maybe how you could tailor your message to that. Okay, great. But then thinking about what are the insights that you're getting from each of those platforms. I think you really have to just distinguish what they are and again what the customer is there for, right? So your marketplace, Amazon, you're there, you're as a customer, you're writing a review. It's transactional, so pretty much. I don't want to completely bucket it just into that, but it is pretty transactional. They asked, you answered. It's honest, it's unbiased feedback. You'll get some highs, you'll get some lows, you'll get a lot of vanilla in the middle, at least if your product's decent, right? And you'll grow volume. If you think about, maybe TikTok or YouTube or something else, the customer is it's taking the time to record a video, right? And they've invested time in that review. They might be proud, they might be excited, they might be frustrated with how long it took for them to assemble the product or use whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But it's a deeper glimpse into how they're using the product, right? Not just what they say or um what they write, but what they actually do, right? They're showing you that level deeper. It's why customer experience experts record a customer using a product versus simply asking them, right? Because those visual cues are what either back up what they're saying or just completely contradict what a customer is saying that they did, but they're showing you that they did something different. And that's a completely different podcast episode too that we can talk about in user experience.
Yes.
Um, and then, there's other forums as well, right? Reddit is your unfiltered truth, for example, and, it has its reputation. But if you're not looking, then, you're missing those insights.
For sure. And it takes me back to the example that you stated about the medical brand. Uh, it's if they said like they have to use the product for 90 days, somebody on YouTube recording it for 90 days, how their journey was, it gives a lot of insights. Maybe in between they just, lost the track, they're not able to follow it, and then they catch up after, 20 days or something. You get a lot of insights that way as a brand.
You absolutely do, right? And the customer has taken that time to invest in showing you that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, that's it. It's so valuable.
Right. Where do you kind of see the biggest missed opportunity today with personalization? Is it on the PDPs or the category pages, social media? Where are the kind of misses that's happening?
Yeah, it does depend on the product, the
Yeah.
the brand, the category, the goals of the brand. But there's some really basic foundational missed opportunities that I think every brand can take advantage of, right? And there's a lot of brands that just sort of treat every visitor the same. And that's where your missed opportunity is to reduce friction or decision speed. And it can happen on the PDP, it can happen on a category page, it can happen with bundles. But I love to use the example of Amazon as well as Uber Eats does this as well. And they show users what they purchased the last time, right? So if
Right.
you're on Uber Eats, it's like order this again. Oh, that made it easy. I don't have to decide what's for dinner.
Yeah.
So right there's a lot of ways and a lot of different really good examples out there. Obviously, Amazon does that, right? If I'm always buying the same mascara, nail polish color, and for whatever reason I haven't put it on subscription, then just make it easy for me to buy again. I don't want to go looking for it, right? And I think again, Amazon obviously does a really good job of that, but brands can take advantage of that too. Again, whether they're on a marketplace and using some of the data to surface that, or whether they're on their own brand direct to consumer site. And I think that biggest missed opportunity is just make it easier for a customer to do what they've already done before,
For sure.
right? If they're
Right.
coming back to your site, if you've won that the retention of the return visit after purchase, well then make it easy for them to find something that they're either looking for again to repurchase or that goes with what it was that they've already purchased. And so I think that's one thing that's a missed opportunity. One other example is around, I touched on it a little bit, but I want to go a little deeper around post-purchase personalization. So your consumer has just opened their wallet. They've proven to you, right, that they're more than just interested in your brand. They've actually made a purchase. And that moment where you're giving them an order confirm and sort of a thank you is
Yeah. Very, very
incredibly
essential.
unpersonalized. It's about as dry as it can possibly get. And
Yeah.
if you think about it and turn it on its off, you turn it into its offline counterpart for a moment, right? You've just
Yeah.
been in a store and you've purchased a coffee maker, right? And you've purchased a coffee maker and you've worked with the sales associate and they've shown you, the different functions, the different features. You picked one
Yeah.
and you get to the register and you pay for it And, the salesperson is just like, okay, thanks, bye, have a good day.
Yeah.
And then just,
Very meek.
I mean, they don't, right? Like that doesn't happen in real life. So don't let it happen. Don't let it happen on your website, right? I mean, show someone tips and tricks to use their coffee maker, the right beans to go with it, the right way to clean it, or any accessories or parts that they might need. Check in after a couple of days. Are they using it? Do they have questions? Whatever it might be. It can be, if it's a technical product, make sure they know how to use it. If it's something simple, help them find something else that goes with it. And I think, the the order confirm is the one where it just closes the door from an e-commerce perspective, and the door should be wide open at that point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can totally go on a rant with the post-purchase personalization that you pointed out because I had the worst experience purchasing a rug once. It was from a very new brand. It was like really pretty blue, turquoise blue color and everything. And after it came, they had these promises of, it's anti-slippery and it's just like very easy to clean, but no instructions on how exactly do I wash it or what is the exact procedure. And then I am behind them to understand this. Like, how do I clean this? How do I maintain this? All of that, but no responses. And I was really, really disappointed. Like, I'm reaching out on WhatsApp, I'm reaching out on Instagram, on emails. Like, where are you guys? Help me. And it's like slippery. So,
Oh my gosh. It is, right. It's such a lost opportunity, right? It's a lost opportunity,
yeah.
not just for revenue, but then for you to share that brand with someone else, whether it's, formal, you're doing it through a review, or you're doing it, you know, through any other means, but, or just kind of spontaneous and natural, right? Like
Yeah.
you're talking to a friend at dinner and you're like, oh, look at this, what I just got, and I love it. And then it draws a new customer. So they've just totally lost the plot. So, like,
Yeah, we spoke a lot about, how brands can work with personalization. Now, I want to understand a little bit more on how brand teams are juggling this whole responsibility because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of different teams looking at data. It's a lot of work. So, what do you think are the kind of things that keeps brand managers awake at night when it comes to personalization on different platforms?
yeah. So Um, I think if we look at, right, D2C platforms, and we look at marketplaces as an example, marketplaces, what kept me up at night and what keeps me up at night is just not owning the experience, right? It's in the retailer's hand. They can trade a customer up, they can trade a customer down. The algorithm changes and you don't know about it. And you wake up the next morning and you were in spot one and now you're in spot 16. And you don't know how to fix it, right? So
Yeah.
you have competitors jockeying for position in the same space, right? Every brand has competitors, but on a marketplace, you're all in the same crowded room.
Yeah.
Um, and I think you can personalize content to an extent in the marketplace, right? You
Yeah.
can certainly personalize your PDP more or less on different marketplaces, but you can't personalize that experience at all, right? It's owned by the marketplace, and I think that's a challenge from a retailer perspective, right? You just don't own any of that. But in a D2C perspective, you own everything. So that's the thing that keeps you up at night. You have the control, but if it breaks, you own it, right? And if it's working, that's great. But if you need to find a way to make it work faster, harder, smarter, what have you, well, then there's all sorts of data to look through, right? You have more data, you have more areas of opportunity, more, rocks to potentially look under, quick fixes, longer strategic projects. And so all of that just makes it more complex, and, more ways to get it right, but more ways to kind of screw it up too,
Yes.
if you're not careful. So I think that, if the thing that keeps the thing that keeps me up at night from a D2C perspective is there's control, but that equals responsibility to drive it. On a marketplace, you don't have that control. So there are some things that are out of your hands, and that is the piece that sort of keeps you up at night.
Definitely. And I think this conversation is not complete if we don't talk about LLMs. What's happening in that space? What is the personalization perspective that brands need to work with when, kind of approaching LLMs and the kind of search discovery that, consumers are taking right now?
Yeah, it's such a hot topic, and there is a ton to unpack, but
Yeah.
I think for me, it's taking a really pragmatic approach to it. It's still very early. I did um immediately go to my AI when some of the news broke around, being able to shop, through AI. And I asked it to buy me something, and it couldn't. But it showed me some interesting options that I could purchase on my own. So it is early. So I do like to take a very pragmatic approach to it. And what I've learned, I'm certainly not the expert. What I've learned is it's data and it's structure. And even in storytelling, it's data and it's structure. So AI isn't a person.
Yeah.
It doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have senses. It
Yeah.
can't feel your brand story. It
Yeah.
uses data to solve an equation.
Yeah.
And if you think about the data that you're putting in to solve the equation that the consumer is asking, well, then that storytelling needs to come through in the data. The LLM needs to find it. They need to index it, and they need to be able to output it so that it does answer the question. But it's all about the data, and your storytelling has to sit in there. I think that that's the thing that brands will have to understand and figure out the data sort of need underneath it so that your AI can use it intentionally, right? Because your storytelling is your emotional layer of the brand. Um, if it's not in the data,
Yeah.
and no AI can use it. They can't tell the difference between that and something else.
Yeah. I mean, this technical side sounds really sad to me from a shopper perspective as well. I had two episodes previously recorded. It was all about de-hyping AI. One was with Chris Perry, the other one was with Scott. And Scott had this interesting perspective to share that, it's just a search bar. I mean, that's all that we
Yes.
have evolved to with
Yes.
AI. And we're like still typing in there, again, typing in there. So what is
Mhm.
the whole evolution about? I mean,
It's That is absolutely true. I love how you positioned it, but it's about demystifying it a little bit.
yeah,
it is the new shiny object, right? It's
yeah,
the one that everyone wants, it's the one that everyone uses, but at the end of the day, it is a search
it's
bar.
real.
Yeah, it is real.
Yeah,
It is a search bar, if you will. It's an intelligent
yeah,
search.
yeah,
It does some really, really interesting things,
yeah,
but it's solving an equation, right? It's
yeah,
looking at what you're asking, telling, saying, or whatever in that
yes,
and it's solving an equation. So using data to solve an equation, like I said, the pragmatic approach to it is
yeah,
what's gonna drive it, I think, go forward.
right. I have like last two, three questions for you, Jenny. Does personalization become more about precision messaging or product and assortment decisions in the future? Where is it headed?
It's both. I mean, the simple answer is
Yeah,
it has to be both, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
your precision messaging gets the consumer there. It's the age old, right message, right time, right person, right?
yeah,
So that's what's important from a precision messaging perspective. Your product assortment decisions um is what keeps them there and gets them to convert, right? Like, do you have what the consumer is actually looking for? Do you have what they actually want? You can't message your way out of a bad assortment. And you can't rely on great products if no one knows that they exist. So, forgetting about product for a moment, forgetting about online, forgetting about all of that, ask yourself this, right? A funny little anecdote. Would you invite your friends over to a house party if your house was dirty, complete mess, there's laundry everywhere, and you didn't have food or beverage? The bad assortment, right? You wouldn't do it. But similarly, you're sitting home alone on a Friday night, you have a stocked bar, but you forgot to invite all your friends and no one's free. Bad messaging, right? So it's you kind of you take it out of like the day to day of what everyone's in and what job they're we're all doing. Just think about it. Think about it in plain like human terms, right? Your life, right? Like your real life experiences. So again, the same sort of thing happens, right? If people don't know about you, well, then that's a problem. If people know about you but aren't impressed with what it is that you got going on, then also not a good place to be in. You need both.
Yeah, I just love all the examples that you share, Jenny. It takes me back to one of the examples that you shared in the previous episode. It was about if you go to a restaurant and you want to be served really, really warm and nicely, and the food should be good, the host should be good. It's the same that you expect at marketplaces and all these places with personalization as well. So takes me back there.
It is. Yeah, it is, right? I mean, it's just about being human, right? Like trying to find what it is that the consumer is looking for and just solving that problem. I mean, it's not easy, right? But if you boil it down and think about it in its simplest terms, that's what it is. It doesn't matter if it's at a restaurant, it doesn't matter if it's how you're hosting a party or if it's how you're selling on a marketplace. Ultimately, they all have similarities.
Absolutely. And one last message, if you have for the audience, our brands, what would it be like in the age of AI? How should they, structure, define personalization as of now and moving forward?
Yeah. Yeah. Pragmatic approach again.
Yeah.
It's just based on what your business goals are. Just align what it is that you're doing in AI to your business goals. I mean, AI is fun for the sake of AI, and if you have spare time and spare budget and whatnot, go for it. But I don't know anyone who has that. So don't just fix personalization or make something personalized for personalization's sake. Always ask what's the outcome that you're trying to solve, and then just work backward from that. Don't have a list of 300 tactics. Don't even have a list of 30 tactics, right? The tactics, you can have a list of a bunch of tactics. Those tactics are easy. The foundations are hard. Do the hard thing.
Do the hard thing. That's the message. Right.
Yeah.
Jenny, it was wonderful having you again on the podcast. So insightful, so packed with a lot of examples and, real life inputs, like just being human. I mean, approaching and relating things from a very human perspective. Thank you so much for joining me on this show.
Thank you so much for having me back, Shrestha. I love the conversation.